Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our next webinar of the day. If you were with me earlier, we were talking about space. Today, we're going to bring it back to Earth, and we're going to be talking about geography, which is the study of the planet, the study of the physical features of the planet, what you can see, what it looks like. And we're going to be talking about continents, the big chunks of land that you can see from space that our planet is made up of. And you are on a continent right now. A lot of these webinars have been for some older kids, maybe kids in middle school and high school. What we're trying to do with this webinar today is activities that are a bit better for kids in maybe kindergarten, first, second, third grade. So if you're one of those, hello and welcome, and I'm glad that you're here. If you're a bit older than that, that's totally okay too. Stick around. I saw a few names of people logging in that I know are a bit older than that, and I hope you stick around and maybe you'll learn something new, or maybe you'll just, get reminded of stuff that you might have forgotten. As I was preparing for this today, I was learning things that I'd kind of forgotten. Some really basic stuff about the continents, which was really cool. Okay, we have Savannah and Denali. Hi, guys. And Arya and Isaiah and Anjali, Avery. Hello. So many of you who are familiar with this know to use the Q&A, question and answer box down below. If you have questions and you would like me to answer them, or if I ask you a question and you have an answer, you can type your answer into that Q&A box and I'll see it there. All right, we are talking about the continents. So we're going to go through them alphabetically. And the first one in the alphabet is Africa. Okay, here is a map of Africa. This isn't exactly what it looks like from space. This is a map drawn by people. And you can see there's lines all through it. Those lines don't actually exist. Those are lines drawn on the map so that we can separate out for ourselves when we see it, where are the different countries? And like here is Egypt up here, and Morocco's over here, and here is Madagascar. For any of you who've seen the movie Madagascar and anything with the penguins, I love that movie. That is where Madagascar takes place, in Madagascar. Down there we have South Africa. This is a really, really cool continent. Here's what it looks like from space. This is one of the coolest things. You can see in the middle, there's a bunch of green. It's very warm, and there's a lot of water, and you get these really thick jungles that can grow there. And even when it's not a thick jungle, you can get a lot of rich, grass and trees growing. A lot of animal life is able to live off of that. And you can see as you go up, as you go north, it gets really brown. There's a big desert up there. That's the Sahara Desert. There's really not a lot growing there. There's spots of water. There's some rivers and some lakes and some bits where the water comes out of the ground, but it's definitely not as wet up there. It's still very hot, but not as much water around. So there's not as much plant life. And if you keep going south towards South Africa, it starts to get a little bit brown again. You're moving away from that really warm and wet part of the continent, but there's still a lot of life in all of these places, whether or not there's thick jungle or in the middle of the desert with a bunch of sand, there's life everywhere. I also pulled up, what do each of these continents look like from space? Because it's really cool. All those bits, those points of light, those aren't natural, those are human-made. If you see any light on the Earth at night, it's probably from something that humans have made. And you can, it makes a really easy map to see where are humans living and where do they have a lot of electricity and buildings and cities and things like that. All right. Here's this snake of lights right there near the top of the continent. That is in Africa. That is the Nile River. And if you've studied anything about ancient Egypt, you know that in old Egypt, like thousands of years ago, 5,000 years ago, maybe farther back, I don't remember exactly how many years ago it was, but Egypt was one of the first big, really stable civilizations that we have a record of in human history. And they were around for a long time, you know, several hundreds, maybe a few thousand years. And they lived on this really rich river right here. So that even though there's desert all around them, this river, that water, brings the life. It brings the water that they need to grow the crops to eat, to survive. And a very rich civilization, still is today. Amazing place to go visit if you can. So you can see all along that river where they've, you know, there's rivers, there's towns and cities and roads and lights at night. South Africa, you can see a lot of lights down there. There's less lights through the middle of the continent here, but there's still a lot of people that live there. A lot of people live in Africa, but they don't use lights at night as much as other parts of the world might. And I also put together some slides of what are some animals from each of these continents. Africa is the coolest continent when it comes to animals, in my opinion, because you've got, I am not from Africa. I have not visited Africa. I really want to, because look at these animals. You've got a zebra. What if a horse was black and white at the same time? That's a zebra. I really want to see a zebra. Elephants, one of the most awesome animals. What if your horse was really, really, really tall? They have giraffes. I would love to see these animals in person. The hippopotamus is one of my favorite animals because we were talking about the Nile River, and this thing, it's a big animal. It eats plants, and it just kind of chills in the river. It's just hanging out in the river all day long, and it's going along. And even though it's really big, they float pretty well, and they can just kind of like swim along on the river really comfortably. We see lions and leopards, these big cats. We've got the rhinoceros and the hyena, which if any of you have seen The Lion King, the hyenas are some of my favorite characters in The Lion King because I think that they're really funny. Okay, the next continent in our alphabetical list of continents is Antarctica. Okay, here is, do I have a globe? I do have a globe. Let me grab it really quick. Here's a globe of the Earth, and we can kind of see this pretty well here. It's a little fuzzy, I know. But there we go. Okay, so there is Africa that we were just studying about, learning about. And if you turn and look at the bottom of the Earth, oh, there we go. There is Antarctica. And it's sitting down at the bottom, the way we normally choose to think about the planet. And it is all white. It is just ice. Here's what Antarctica looks like from space. It's white, snow everywhere. And you can see, I hope you can see my mouse here, the really white part, that is where land is. And the rest of it around it is ocean everywhere. But even the ocean, for many miles out from land, is frozen for much of the year into ice. So here is actual land, and then you keep going, and it's ice, 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 ice. Because in the winter down there, it gets super cold, and it freezes the ocean. It is April right now, so where I'm at in North America, and on the northern half of the planet, it's spring heading towards summer. on the southern half of the planet. So here we are. Here I am on the northern part of the planet, the northern hemisphere. We're in spring. We're heading towards summer. On the southern part of the planet, the southern hemisphere, which means half sphere. This is a sphere, and if you cut it in half, you have two halves. So the south hemisphere, they're in fall, heading towards winter right now. Antarctica is getting really cold, and it's going to be cold for a long time until spring starts hitting. So that's what it looks like from space. Oh, Aubrey says, can we watch Continents and Oceans by abcmouse.com? Aubrey, thank you. Each of you are more than welcome to go to abcmouse.com and watch their material on oceans and continents. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to go through some of the things I have prepared, and playing videos through a Zoom webinar like this, I have found doesn't work super duper well. So that's the kind of thing that's great for you to do on your own at home for additional research to learn more. Okay, and here's what Antarctica looks like from space at night. I don't see any lights there. Do you see any lights? I don't see any lights. If there are any lights, they're very small. There's not a lot of them. Very few humans live on Antarctica because, and most of those that live there are scientists, and they're there to study things. They're there to study maybe animals that live down there, or they're there to study, you know, what happens when something is super cold, or there's scientists that are down there testing certain things that they're going to need for space. If it can work well in Antarctica, in the super cold of Antarctica, maybe it will work well in the super cold of space, or the super cold of the moon or Mars. Animals from Antarctica. Penguins. We all know and love penguins. I love penguins. I used to think that penguins were maybe the size of a person. I used to think that. And then I saw, you know, I should have had a slide ready here that shows, but a penguin would come up to maybe a fully grown adult, maybe to their knee. That's how tall penguins are. I was pretty disappointed when I found out the penguins weren't taller than that, but it does make them even more cute, which is awesome. Here you see some whales that live in the ocean, and these whales do really well in super cold water, like you have around the coast around Antarctica. And so the penguins, they live in the ocean and they live on land. They eat fish. This whale here, the orca, also called the killer whale, they'll eat fish too, but they like to eat the penguins. So it's a pretty rough game that they play down there. Some of these other whales, they don't eat fish. They don't eat penguins. They'll eat plankton, little tiny creatures that, or like little plants that grow in the ocean. They won't eat penguins. So that's good. Asia is the next continent in our list here. This is the biggest continent on our planet. And here you have a good part of Russia up there, and all of China and India. And this continent of Asia also includes a bunch of islands down here. And it's a really cool place. Asia is the continent that has the most people living on it on the entire planet. China alone has more than 1 billion people living there. India also has more than 1 billion people living there. That's a lot of people. Here's what Asia looks like from space. And that looks really cool there. You can see a bunch of green in here, so there's jungle and stuff like that. You also see brown. So up there in the north of China and parts of Russia, there's actually some pretty big desert up there. Even if it's not a bunch of sandy stuff. There's big parts of Russia that it's like really cold ice desert kind of. Not a lot will grow there easily. Over here there's a lot of mountains and there's a lot of desert over here as well. Here's the Arabian Peninsula, Saudi Arabia. Let me go back. Here we go. There's a lot of mountains in this part that I'm pointing to right here. And over here, there's a lot of desert. It made for some really, really cool cultures and people that have lived in these areas. Here's what Asia looks like from space at night. And here we see, starting from the left, we see India. A lot of lights there. Like I said, 1 billion people, more than 1 billion people live in India. And you can see the lights from their cities there. You can see the lights all of a sudden just kind of stop right at a line right there. And that's where a big mountain range starts, the Himalaya mountain range. And they're really steep. They're really tall. You can't really build a city sideways on a mountain. So that's why the lights stop there. You head over to China and the lights start, and there's a lot of lights there. Again, more than 1 billion people living there. Here we see Japan, which is a bunch of islands, big islands off the coast of the main continent. And you can see there's a lot of lights in Japan. A lot of lights there. Here are some animals from Asia. My favorite Asian animal has got to be the panda. I love panda bears. I think that they're really cute and they're cool. And they eat bamboo. And I don't know, if you've ever seen a video of pandas, they're just really cute. Savannah asked, are there dragons there? No dragons. Dragons are really cool, but unfortunately they don't exist. At least not dragons the way I'm thinking of right now. You know, like huge lizard with wings that breathes fire. Those don't exist, which is kind of a bummer because that would be really cool, but it's also pretty good because I don't think I could win a fight against a dragon. I think there would be some problems from dragons if they existed. Oh, Isaiah asked, what is the glowing stuff under Asia? Let's go back to that picture really quick. All right. Good, thank you, Isaiah. So here's Asia. There's a bunch of islands down here, and there's a lot of people that live on those islands as well. And so we can see lights there at night, showing that there's humans living there. All this dark stuff around there, that's all ocean. We're going to be talking about oceans on a completely separate subject tomorrow. Okay. Good. Okay, tigers and brown bears. These are all animals in Asia. The Arctic fox, if you go up north in Asia, you get north and it gets really cold, and you're going to have polar bears and you're going to have Arctic foxes and animals that are much better for living up in northern, very cold climates. Okay, Australia. There's Australia. Okay, this is a really awesome continent. There have been people living in Australia for tens of thousands of years. And then when European explorers found Australia in kind of the 1700s and started settling in the 17 and 1800s, they had to figure out a way to work together with the people who've been living there for many, many thousands of years before that. All right. Oh, yes, Hannah, thank you. There are creatures called dragons. They're called Komodo dragons. They live in Indonesia. Yes, those are things. They're big lizards. They're, I don't know, maybe as wide as my arms here, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know instantly off the top of my head, but they call them dragons. They call them Komodo dragons. They don't have wings. They don't fly, and they don't breathe fire. So, yeah. All right. Here is Australia from space. And, all right. Did I get a better picture of it? There's Australia at night. We'll go to that in a moment. So we can see a lot of Australia is pretty dry. You can see it's brown on the inside. A lot of Australia is kind of desert-ish. Excuse me while I take a sip. There's a lot of really dry parts of Australia. Around the edges of the continent, you have more water coming from the ocean and stuff. And that's where a lot of the human cities are. Someone asked, what ocean is Australia in? It's touching a couple of oceans. On the west side of it, you have it touching the Indian Ocean. And on the east side, you have it touching the Pacific Ocean. We'll talk more about oceans tomorrow, same time. Okay, here's Australia at night, and you can see there's plenty of human cities on the coastlines. There's, if you know your Australian geography better than me, then very well done, and I apologize. But this, I think, is Sydney. I think that's Melbourne, and I think that's Perth. Those are the names of the cities there. I probably should have read up a little bit more on that before we talked about this today. Okay, good. In the middle, not a lot of human cities. Again, it's a bunch of desert. There are some bits, and it's really gorgeous there, but it's dry. Animals from Australia. Okay, they've got some really cool things there. They've got specific kinds of crocodiles. They've got this, it's called the wandering albatross. It's a huge bird. Its wingspan, its wings are about as big as my arms or bigger there. Huge. They've got koalas, super cute. Dingoes, that's a kind of wild dog. They've got the platypus, which, you know, duck like a, it's got the mouth of a duck and the body of maybe like a beaver or something like that. Really cool animal, one of a kind. They got these big birds called emus. They're kind of like ostriches, but they're called emus. They're really tall. They're taller than a human, I think. Oh, and it says European rabbit. When the European settlers came, they brought some of their animals with them. And some of those animals would have gotten out and gone wild and started living in the wild. So that's how you've got these wild dogs there and these wild rabbits. Europe. All right, Europe is, there's a big landmass that Europe and Asia both are on. And they kind of had to cut part of it and call it a different continent just to be clear in how they categorized things. But here you've got like Spain and Germany and part of Russia, and there's England and the rest of the United Kingdom. There's Italy, the boot sticking out into the Mediterranean Sea. It looks like a boot kicking a ball or something. Here's what it looks like from space. Look at that, very green. A lot of forest. Not all of it. Over in Spain, you've got some drier bits without thick vegetation growing, but a lot of that is very green. Good for growing stuff. Here's Europe at night. Look at that. So many people live there. Here's the United Kingdom. There's London. That bright spot is London. This bright spot there, I think, is probably Paris. I think it's Paris, France. This over here, I think, is Moscow in Russia. Big, big city in Russia. Italy, perfectly outlined against the sea with all those lights there. Greece over here with their many, many islands. Here's some animals from Europe, and these animals are very familiar to me because North America and Europe share a lot of animals, very similar species on both continents. We've got moose, and we've got like a badger, We've got a raccoon and a squirrel and a rabbit, bears. All right, North America. This is where I am. Is this where all of you are, or many of you? All right. Oh, someone asked how many people live in Europe. I'm sorry, Savannah, I don't have that number in my mind right now. Let me go back one slide. So North America, we've got the United States. That's where I am. There's Alaska, part of the United States. You've got Canada here. You've got Greenland. And you've got Mexico and the Central American countries down there. Here's what North America looks like from space. And you can see a lot of green in this part of the country and in that part of the United States and the similar part of Canada. In the middle, a little bit more desert-like, not quite as wet, not quite as much water, and some desert going on there, or more desert-like places. Here's what we look like from space. And you can see lights, a lot of lights on the West Coast there. There's Los Angeles and San Diego and San Francisco. Right around here is where Portland is. That's Portland, Oregon. That's where I'm at. And over here is the East Coast of the United States. You've got New York and New Jersey and Boston and Washington, D.C. Down here, you've got like Tampa and Miami and Florida. Really cool to see how the lights all network and you can see cities from space. That's awesome. Up in the north of Canada, not a lot of lights, not a lot of people living up there. It's very cold. And here's North American animals. Ooh, just a few minutes left. Okay, we're gonna hurry up and we're gonna make sure we get through our last continent today. North American animals. These are the ones I'm the most familiar with because it's where I grew up. But we've got your bear and your turkey and your porcupine, and there's deer. That's a really pretty looking deer right there. And you've got blue jay, that's a kind of bird. Got bald eagles, which look amazing. If you've seen a bald eagle in real life, they are so pretty. Certain kinds of rabbits. We have raccoons and so much cool stuff. All right, South America, the last continent we're going to talk about today. It's listed last here just because I went by alphabet, and S is later in the alphabet than all the other letters that the other continents start with. But South America is an incredible continent. A big chunk of it is the country of Brazil right there. They have hundreds of millions of people living in Brazil. A lot of people in South America speak Spanish. In Brazil, they speak Portuguese. Spain colonized much of this, and Portugal colonized this area here. Here's what South America looks like from space. Some brown bits, or not quite as green and leafy. There's a big mountain range right here called the Andes. But you look at this rich green part right in the middle. That's the Amazon rainforest and the Amazon River. That is one of the most incredible places on Earth. A lot of species and animals live there. Here we see South America from space. And you can see a lot of human settlements around the edges of the continent and going into the continent a bit. Here's Brazil. And is that more Brazil? Let me go back a few slides. Other countries there, Argentina, Uruguay, other countries. Up here we have Venezuela. Okay, good. And in the middle, not a lot of lights there. The Amazon rainforest is very thick, very rich. And I'm really happy that humans have kind of let a lot of that forest just be there. If we go and live in the Amazon rainforest, we're kind of visitors there. We're kind of tourists. We're not going to build a big New York City in the middle of the rainforest. We let the planet win that one. I like that. Here's some animals from South America. They have some of the most incredible species on Earth, especially in those rich rainforests. They've got jaguars and ocelots, these big cats that hunt in the jungle there. You've got a cougar, another big hunting kind of cat. You've got sloths, the really not lazy, but they move very slowly up in the trees. The ibis and parrots, these really colorful, incredible birds and incredible lizards, special frogs and birds and toads and snakes and insects, all kind of amazing things live in South America. Okay. All right. Wow, that went really quick. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. Come back at the same time tomorrow at 11:15 to 11:45 Pacific time. And we're going to be talking about the different oceans and seas around the world. All right, thanks everyone.